There are moments in life when you don't feel shattered, and you don't feel okay either, you simply feel blank. A quiet emptiness settles in, not loud enough to be called pain, not soft enough to be peace. It's a strange experience, one people rarely talk about, because it isn't dramatic. In fact, it's so subtle that even you might miss the moment your emotions go dim, like someone slowly lowering the brightness inside your mind. Emotional numbness doesn't always look like sadness. Sometimes it looks like you sitting silently in your room, staring at a wall, unsure whether you're resting or simply paused. Other times it's you forcing a laugh because you know the moment requires it, or answering, "I'm fine," not because you are, but because you don't even know what not fine is supposed to feel like anymore. Over time, some people begin to believe that this emotional quietness is simply their personality. They start to identify with the emptiness, assuming they were always built this way, when in reality, the mind is doing something far more complex. What many people don't realize is that emotional numbness isn't an absence of feeling, it's a protective shield. It isn't apathy, which is not caring. It's wanting to care, wanting to feel, but finding that the emotional circuits inside you have temporarily gone offline. The mind is whispering, "You're carrying too much. Let me turn the volume down." Picture a moment in your life where you expected a big emotional reaction. Maybe a goodbye, a disappointment, a heartbreak. You prepared yourself for the wave of feeling that should have followed. But instead of drowning in emotion, you felt nothing. A quiet emptiness. A soft internal silence. This silence isn't failure. It's protection. The same way the body numbs physical pain during shock, the mind numbs emotional overwhelm. And the sad truth is, many people spend years surviving on emotional low-power mode without realizing it. But here's where the story gets deeper. Numbness often grows out of long-term stress, repeated emotional hits, or environments where expressing feelings wasn't safe. Over time, the emotional system adapts by shutting down. The problem is, this shutdown is lonely. It creates a quiet distance between you and the world, a thin invisible glass that separates presence from connection. But what if this numbness isn't the end of emotion, just the beginning of understanding? Stay with me for the psychology behind your mind's silent shield. When you look deeper into psychology, you begin to understand that emotional numbness isn't a flaw, it's a signal. A quiet message from your mind saying, something inside you needs time. Most people confuse numbness with indifference, but the truth is far more nuanced. Indifference is when you genuinely don't care. Numbness is when you wish you could care but your emotional system has hit pause. The mind is extraordinary in the way it protects you. When emotions become too heavy, whether because of repeated disappointment, chronic stress, or long-term emotional overload, your mind steps in like a guardian. It lowers the intensity, not because you don't deserve to feel, but because your system needs space to breathe. Think about a moment from your past when you expected to feel something powerful. A heartbreak, a goodbye, a life change. You prepared yourself, bracing for the impact. But the wave never came. Instead, a soft internal quietness settled in. That quietness wasn't emptiness, it was delay. Your emotional world was saying, "Not right now. You're not ready yet." What many people don't realize is that this emotional dimming can become a habit. If your early life taught you that expressing emotions wasn't safe, or wasn't useful, your mind learned that the best strategy was silence. Not external silence, but internal silence. And once that habit forms, it tends to follow you into adulthood, often without your awareness. Over time, numbness becomes a shield. A shield built from unresolved moments, heavy burdens, and emotional responsibilities you carried long before you had the tools to process them. But shields, even protective ones, come with a cost. They create distance, between you and joy, between you and connection, between you and yourself. And this kind of emotional distance is subtle. You go to work, you talk to people, you laugh at the right moments, you look completely fine. That's the irony. Emotional numbness often hides behind functionality. You become good at managing life, even if you no longer feel fully present in it. But here is the part most people never hear: emotional numbness can be reversed. Feelings don't disappear, they wait. They linger beneath the surface until the mind senses safety again. Your emotional world isn't gone, it's simply sleeping, resting, preparing for its return. Next, we explore how numbness quietly intertwines with loneliness, and why that loneliness feels so different from the kind you can explain. Emotional numbness has a quiet companion that often walks beside it: loneliness. Not the kind you can point to, not the kind that makes you feel isolated in a crowd, but a softer, more confusing kind. A loneliness that sits inside you even when you're surrounded by people. A loneliness that doesn't shout, it just lingers. When numbness and loneliness blend together, they create a strange emotional distance. You see people laughing, connecting, feeling alive, and although you understand the moment intellectually, you can't quite connect to it emotionally. It's like living behind a thin pane of glass. You can see life moving, hear life happening, but you remain slightly removed from it, watching rather than participating. This is one of the most misunderstood parts of emotional numbness: how silent and invisible the loneliness becomes. You don't feel sad. You don't feel broken. You just feel apart. Disconnected in a way that you can't fully explain. You might still show up for people. You might still smile, still respond, still function. But inside, something feels muted, as though the emotional world you once belonged to is now happening at a distance. Psychologists often refer to this kind of experience as emotional disconnection, a protective mechanism that forms when the mind feels overwhelmed or exhausted. The mind doesn't want you to be hurt again, so it creates space between you and the world. Not because you don't want connection, but because connection requires vulnerability, and vulnerability requires feelings that your system temporarily shut down. This internal loneliness can even affect the things you once loved. Hobbies lose their color. Music loses its spark. Conversations feel thinner. Even joy feels foreign, like something you once knew but can't quite remember how to reach. And so, the loneliness deepens, not because you're alone, but because you're disconnected from your own emotional compass. But here's something powerful: the presence of loneliness is actually a sign that your feelings aren't gone. They're still there, just locked behind a layer of protection. Loneliness means you still desire connection, still desire depth, still desire meaning. And desire is a sign of life. Emotional numbness doesn't erase your emotional world. It simply muffles it. Now, we'll explore why numbness can feel comfortable, and why many people unknowingly stay inside it even when they want to break free. One of the most surprising truths about emotional numbness is that, for many people, it becomes a strangely comfortable place to stay. Not happy, not peaceful, just familiar. A quiet zone where the emotional highs and lows are muted, where the world feels distant but predictable. It's not the comfort of joy but the comfort of stability, and sometimes, that feels safer than feeling too much. Numbness can feel like a soft emotional fog. You may not feel excitement, but you also don't feel heartbreak. You may not feel joy, but you also don't feel fear. In a world that often feels chaotic, overwhelming, or demanding, that neutrality can feel like relief. A place where nothing hurts, even if nothing truly moves you either. This is why many people stay numb longer than they intend to. Not because they want to avoid life, but because life has exhausted them. When you've carried too many responsibilities, handled too many emotional storms, or dealt with unpredictable environments, numbness becomes a form of emotional conservation. A way for the mind to say, let's survive first, feel later. For some, numbness becomes a routine. They wake up, go through their day, do what needs to be done, and return home without ever checking in with how they feel. Not because they don't care, but because feelings require energy, and they've already spent that energy on simply holding themselves together. Others use productivity to stay numb. They fill their schedules, keep themselves constantly busy, or chase achievement after achievement. Because as long as they're moving, they don't have to sit alone with the quiet inside. And society often praises this kind of emotional avoidance. People call you strong. People admire your discipline. People say, "You never slow down, how do you do it?" But deep down, there's a quiet truth: some people keep moving so they don't have to feel. There's also a very subtle kind of dissociation that comes with numbness. You're present, but not fully present. You're living, but not fully living. It's like watching your life from a few steps back, participating just enough to stay functional but not enough to feel connected. It's not dramatic, it's gentle, quiet, and difficult to notice until you look closely. But here's the part that matters: numbness isn't meant to be permanent. The mind doesn't shut down forever. It's simply waiting for the emotional weather inside you to calm down. Next, we'll explore the turning point, how emotions begin to awaken again, often in the smallest, most unexpected ways. The return of emotion rarely arrives as a flood. More often, it begins quietly, so quietly that you might not even recognize it at first. Emotional numbness doesn't suddenly break open, it softens. It loosens its grip in small, almost invisible ways, like gentle cracks appearing in a long frozen surface. For many people, the first sign is physical, not emotional. You might notice your breathing becoming a little deeper. Your body feeling a little lighter. Your mind slowing down instead of rushing. These small shifts are signals, your nervous system beginning to trust again. Before your heart awakens, your body whispers. Then come the tiny emotional sparks. Moments you didn't expect to feel anything from suddenly give you a slight warmth. A joke that genuinely makes you laugh, not because you're supposed to, but because something inside you responded. A song that touches a part of you that had been silent. A conversation that leaves you feeling a little more connected than usual. These moments might last only seconds, but they matter. The emotional world inside you doesn't return all at once. It returns in pieces. A soft spark of curiosity one day. A quiet sense of comfort another. A fleeting moment of joy that disappears quickly but reminds you it still exists. This process is slow, gentle, and deeply human. You might even feel confused during these early stages. Part of you wants to lean into the feelings, and another part pulls back, unsure if it's safe. That hesitation is normal. When numbness has been your emotional home for a while, feeling again can be intimidating, not because emotions are dangerous, but because you've lived without them for so long. But here's something beautiful: your emotional system returns when it senses that you're ready to hold it. When life quiets down just enough. When your mind decides it doesn't need to protect you in the same way anymore. When the pressure inside you begins to ease. Even the smallest emotional spark is proof that your inner world is waking up. Proof that numbness was never emptiness, it was simply a pause. And these sparks add up. One by one, they reconnect you to yourself. They rebuild the pathways that stress or overwhelm once dimmed. Next, we'll look deeper into this transformation, how numbness can sometimes be a sign of inner growth, not collapse, and how your emotional world reorganizes before returning. There's a side of emotional numbness that most people overlook, a side that isn't about shutting down, but about transitioning. Before you step into a new emotional version of yourself, your old emotional patterns often grow quiet. This silence isn't failure. It's preparation. A recalibration happening deep within your mind, even if you're not aware of it. Psychologists often describe emotional numbness as a temporary state where the mind reorganizes itself. Think of it as your inner world decluttering old fears, old responses, old wounds, making room for something new. Not because you chose to, but because your emotional system is far more intelligent and adaptive than you realize. During this phase, your mind pauses the emotional noise so it can understand what needs to heal, what needs to be released, and what needs to be rebuilt. It's similar to how the body redirects energy to recover from an injury, quietly, slowly, and with patience. Emotional numbness works the same way. The silence isn't emptiness, it's restoration. This is why some people who feel numb are actually on the edge of emotional growth. Their systems are upgrading quietly in the background. They're letting go of old defense mechanisms. They're preparing for deeper self-awareness, even if the process feels uncomfortable or confusing. And this transitional numbness often reveals something profound. You haven't lost your emotions, you're transforming them. Even the metaphors people use reflect this. They say things like, "It feels like something inside me went quiet," or "It feels like my heart is muted." These aren't signs of collapse. They're signs of shift. The emotional system is not shutting down, it's reorganizing. Another powerful truth is this: people who feel numb often feel deeply. They're not emotionless, they're overwhelmed by emotions they had no space to process. Their system didn't break, it protected them. And now, in this quiet stage, it's learning how to feel differently, more safely, more steadily. You may even notice subtle signs of growth during this period. Increased self-reflection. A deeper understanding of your own patterns. A quiet awareness of what drains you and what nourishes you. These are emotional roots forming beneath the surface. Numbness, in this sense, is not a void. It's a waiting room. Next, we'll explore the emotional courage required to reconnect, and why many people fear the return of feelings even when they crave them. There is a part of emotional numbness that almost no one talks about: the fear of feeling again. It sounds strange at first. Why would someone who feels nothing be afraid of emotions returning? But when you look closer, it makes perfect sense. When you've lived through heavy seasons, when your mind has shielded you from overwhelming emotions, the idea of those feelings coming back can feel like opening a door you're not sure you can walk through. Many people don't fear the emotions themselves, they fear the intensity, the memories, the vulnerability that comes with them. When numbness has been your shelter, even joy can feel risky. Because joy creates attachment, and attachment creates the possibility of loss. In the same way, sadness, anger, or grief returning can feel like reopening wounds you've worked so hard to ignore. This fear shows up quietly. You might avoid deep conversations. You might keep relationships at surface level. You might shy away from situations that could spark genuine emotion, good or bad. Not because you don't want to feel, but because you're uncertain about what those feelings might unleash. There's also a psychological reason behind this fear. When the emotional system has been muted for a long time, the first returning feelings often feel sharper, heavier, or more unfamiliar. Even positive emotions can feel intense after a numb season. This intensity can make people believe they're not ready, so they retreat back into emotional safety mode. But here's the truth: fearing the return of emotion doesn't mean you're weak. It means you've been strong for too long without support. It means you've carried unprocessed pain, quiet responsibilities, or emotional pressure that never had space to breathe. And fear is part of healing. Not a sign that you should turn back, but a sign that you're approaching something meaningful. Reconnection requires courage. It requires allowing yourself to feel again, slowly, gently, without judgment. It requires accepting that emotions won't overwhelm you the way they did in the past, because you're not the same person you were back then. You're wiser now. You're more aware. You're more prepared. And the beautiful part is this: emotions don't return all at once. They come back in waves you can handle, at a pace your mind knows you can carry. Your system is built to protect you, not destroy you. Lastly, we'll bring everything together: how numbness eventually fades, how emotions find their way back home, and how you reconnect with a version of yourself that feels alive again. Emotional numbness rarely ends with a dramatic moment. More often, it fades the same way it arrived, quietly. One day, you notice you're paying attention to the world again. Colors look a little brighter. Music feels a little deeper. Conversations leave a small imprint instead of passing straight through you. These changes are subtle, but they're real. They're signs that your emotional world is returning, piece by piece. Healing doesn't look like a switch being flipped. It looks like gentle reawakening. It looks like you catching yourself feeling something, anything, and realizing that the numbness has loosened its grip. Maybe your laughter becomes a little more genuine. Maybe your thoughts feel a little lighter. Maybe you find yourself caring again, even in small ways. These moments matter. They are evidence that your emotional system wasn't broken, it was resting. And now it's rebuilding. What people often misunderstand is that healing from emotional numbness isn't about forcing yourself to feel. You can't pressure emotions into existence. They grow through safety, through stillness, through softness. When your mind senses that the storm has passed, it allows the doors to open again. And as those doors open, something deeper begins to happen. You reconnect, not just with emotions, but with yourself. You begin to understand what truly affects you and what doesn't. You learn what drains your energy and what nourishes it. You become more aware of your boundaries, your needs, your patterns. Numbness teaches you more than you realize. It reveals where your emotional limits used to be. It shows you the places where you used to carry too much. It highlights the parts of you that needed protection. And once you understand these things, you step into a more grounded version of yourself, someone who feels with both courage and clarity. Most importantly, you learn that feeling again doesn't mean losing control. It means reconnecting with life, with people, with meaning, with the small, quiet joys that make the world feel warm again. You weren't emotionless, you were healing. You weren't distant, you were protecting yourself. And now, as emotions return, you're not going back to who you used to be. You're stepping into someone stronger, softer, and far more self-aware.